Hey guys, happy Thursday and welcome to today's educational series webinar. It's our Teespring design webinar. I'm really excited about this. My name is Vince Tumbleson. If you joined us a couple of weeks back for our first Fireside Chat webinar, welcome back. If this is your first time joining us for a webinar, that's awesome. Welcome. I'm really excited about the webinar that we have put in place today. Today we're going to be covering everything design related. Again, I mentioned this is a webinar in our educational series, which differs slightly from our Fireside Chat. The goal for this one is to teach you some sort of skill or something that'll help you as you go through your design processes. We hope that at the end of this, there will be some takeaways that you can go ahead and apply on the campaigns that you launch later today, later this week. At the end of it, we are going to have a Q&A that if you would like to, you can submit your questions for. We have some questions in advance that we'll be answering. Please keep in mind that on this call you have myself on the Seller Success team and a couple of designers, so we're ready to answer any questions that you have in either of those fields, and we'll try to answer any other questions that we can. So I want to run through a little bit about what we'll be covering today. First off, we'll go through and introduce ourselves. I'll get to that in a bit. Again, we have Johnny and Jimmy waiting on the line. They'll be up in a little bit. But we want to talk about a couple of things in the design creation process. Specifically, we'll be covering how to create a design from start to finish, starting with just an idea. We'll teach you how to replicate the processes that you go through every time. So when you have this brilliant idea, we can show you and help you take it to life. We'll talk a little bit about our internal designer, the one that you see at teespring.com/design, versus the Adobe Suite, where you can create your own files and upload those. We're going to talk a little bit about how to optimize to lower your base costs. We know that everybody is very conscious in trying to keep their costs down, and there are a couple of tips and tricks that we'll be teaching you today that will help you keep those costs down. Finally, we'll be talking about some of the technical differences between a couple of different files, specifically vector images versus rasterizing images. So at the end, like I said, we'll have the Q&A, and yeah, I want to tell you guys a little bit about myself. So as I mentioned, my name is Vince Tumbleson. I am one of the Seller Success Strategists. Hey guys, I'm one of the Seller Success Strategists on our team here at Teespring. I've been at Teespring for a little over a year, and I absolutely love it. The design process is one of my favorite processes. I feel like this is a fantastic outlet to the creativity that so many of our sellers have, and so many of the entrepreneurs who use our platform have. And so that's why I'm really excited about this webinar. For those of you who are on our webinar, like I said last week, thank you so much for joining us again. And I really am excited to hand things over to Johnny and Jimmy. So without further ado, Johnny, Jimmy, go ahead and introduce yourselves. They've been with Teespring for a little over a year as well. I'm really excited to hear what they have to say. I think we have a really cool webinar in store for you guys.
Hey everybody,
Hey,
I'm Johnny.
I'm Jimmy.
We are obviously both graphic designers here at Teespring. We've both been here about the same amount of time, about a year. I, as well as Jimmy, grew up in the area. I personally have been doing graphic design for a little more than 10 years. Run the gamut from printing posters, printing invites, printing flyers, to now printing t-shirts. Greatest place I've ever worked at. A lot of creativity, a lot of good people.
And I've been unofficially in graphic design since I was about 5 years old, so that's going on 20 years now. Starting with MS Paint all the way up through the entire Adobe Creative Suite and beyond. I graduated from Johnson Wales University here in Providence, which is just around the corner, and now I'm on this wild ride that is Teespring, and I absolutely love being here.
Sweet.
So ready to get some designs going?
Awesome. Yeah, I'm really excited for this, and it's been great. And one of my favorite things, again, about this company is the fact that we're hiring some of the best graphic designers in the world, and I'm really excited for these guys to share some of their knowledge with you guys today. So if you guys are queued up and ready to go, take it away.
All right, I'm going to share my screen here with you guys. Our industry standard for graphic design, especially printing t-shirts, is Adobe Illustrator because it deals primarily with vector graphics. Most of the images, if not all the images you see online, are raster-based images and don't really work well on T-shirts. So anything you do is going to have to be ran through some sort of vector program. So this is the basics of wrapping your head around vector artwork.
So right here we have two images right in front of you right now. Okay, here's this one. Here's a kind of a completed, ready-to-go shirt. It's a vectorized graphic. It's a two-color graphic that we put on a black background because it's kind of generally known that black shirts sell better than just about any other color, and pretty much any other darker color goes. So we just as designers, we have a tendency to design with a dark background in mind. So right here we have a finished product. We're going to go through the steps of how we got to this point, the different fonts that we use, how we just got some of the graphics from raster into vector, and we'll kind of go on from there.
All right, perfect. If you were to get artwork without outlining your fonts, you're going to basically have to source fonts. A great source for fonts is dafont, dafont.com. You can go and pretty much find really anything you're looking for. But if you don't have that font in your system, you're going to get something that looks like this.
So right here, all of this text is live, which means that you can type in it and make any edits to the actual text. But since the font isn't on this system right now, it shows up in these pink bars, which means that the font isn't on your system, the computer isn't recognizing it, so it's just giving you just generic text to kind of fill in the spaces, where all of these fonts should be what you see in the actual finished design below.
So if you were to go find a font, you would have to download it on your system. And you'd have to load it in. So we've found these fonts we use in this file. This is one of them. Basically, you're just double-clicking and installing your font. This is on a Mac, which is something most of us use in the building as far as design goes. On a PC, especially newer PCs, it's pretty much the same process.
Yeah, if you have an older PC, say, I believe Windows XP, Windows 2000, maybe even Windows 7, you have to dig through the files a little bit, but there are plenty of great tutorials online about how to install fonts, where to find your font folder on an older computer.
As you can see, they just updated. So now we fully have these on our system. One of the fonts I used was Watermelon. This is one I just uploaded. So as you can see, I got 3 fonts going on in this graphic. Basically took the ones I wanted to comprise different parts of my graphic.
Hey, Johnny, quick question for you.
You got it.
So, a lot of people, obviously everybody here is going to be using these for a commercial purpose, specifically designing T-shirts. Can you talk a little bit about anything we need to be weary of if we're going to be selling these for profit? Using a font that we're getting for...
Yeah, most fonts will tell you if they're for personal use or commercial use.
Yeah, on dafont.com, right next to the download link, it'll actually say right above the download link, free for personal use, which means that you can only use it just, making a poster or something for yourself, nothing that you make profit off of. But anything that's free or, for the most part, shareware, that means that it's good to go for any for-profit uses.
Okay, so we just need to be wary in case something says that this is not for commercial or merchandising purposes, because fonts are intellectual property, correct?
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
That
So
would
definitely something that everybody should be wary of as far as using a font for commercial purposes, making sure that you have the license to do so and the license to use those fonts to print on a T-shirt.
Yeah, and most paid fonts, when you download them, they'll come with a whole file, a README or a license that actually will spell out for you all the different uses, or if there are any extra charges for any sort of commercial purposes. And, it varies from font to font and designer to designer, but for the most part, they will try to tell you everything that there is to know about it in the file that will be downloaded with it.
Awesome. That's fantastic.
All right, perfect. So as you can see, the first line here, I may live in, is used with this font. So what I would do is get rid of everything you don't want. And one of the main things you want to do when making graphics that you got to upload, especially to our designers, you want all the text to be outlined. So you're going to take it from something that's editable like this that I can highlight, click on, retype, to something that's more of a graphic like this. As you can see, you have your outlines, everything's ready to go. Really quick step, all you need to do is just highlight, go to your type, you're creating outlines.
And Johnny, why exactly is that beneficial?
So our system is not going to read it correctly as far as like the colors go. It might not display properly. You might get lucky and it might work, but just to save yourself a headache and to not have to deal with something that you might run into in the future and your shirt doesn't come out the way you want it to because someone else might not have that font and they're going to replace it with whatever looks closest. So if you have a design that you want it to look exactly the way you made it, your best bet is to create outlines and make it into an actual graphic.
Okay, so the big takeaway is to make sure that the file doesn't have any text in it before you end up uploading it.
Little text and stuff you don't want. You can keep it in there while you're making your file, but when you finally finish, save it a certain way and get rid of all your editable text.
Yeah, otherwise, especially in our system, most of the fonts might default to Helvetica, and then nobody wants a design made something like this where you want script and different fonts and weights and everything, and then you get it into our system and it all turns into Helvetica. It's just not going to look the way you envisioned it. So make sure you always outline your text. It'll just save you headaches, it'll save you time, and it'll guarantee that your print will come out just the way you envisioned it in the first place.
Awesome.
I can kind of go through this for you real quick. These are some shirts we've all, as being a graphic designer here at Teespring, we've all made a shirt similar to this.
Yeah, this is a very, very popular style.
And we all know straight text all the time is not always the best, so there are a couple little things you can do to add flair to stuff like this. As you can see, like the California has a little slope to it. Like I said, always outline your fonts. Anything in the Adobe Suite is really powerful. It's going to take you a while to kind of get a handle on everything it does. But there's a couple quick tools you can use, like the Share tool, that makes it easy to go from something normal. But just by clicking and dragging up, now you got that nice little bend on your text there. Put it where you want.
And so when you use a tool like that, it keeps all the letter forms upright, so they're still at the same technical angle, but when you lift the text, it gives it the illusion of being italic and kind of slanting. So it adds kind of a really cool effect without truly distorting the letter forms too much. So it's still totally readable. It won't mess up your files at all, and it will create a really cool effect.
Now I'm just outlining, ungrouping, getting rid of what I don't want, keeping the stuff I do want. I like to group and ungroup my text and most of my stuff. Command-G, or you can just go Object and Group.
Yeah, so Command-G, and if you want to ungroup objects, because say you have a couple words stuck together that you don't want, you would hit basically the same key command, but you add Shift in there. So it would be Command-Shift-G or Control-Shift-G on Windows, and that'll ungroup your objects, so then they'll all become individual objects. So in this case, each letter would be totally independent, but since we want them grouped, we'll keep the M and the Y grouped together so that way they transform together. So in this case, when we scaled up the my, that's all that scales up. The butt still stays its own size, and then you can work them independently of each other.
Couldn't have said it better. So we can kind of show you how it's, you know, it's not too crazy once you play around with it enough.
Yeah, and a lot of this stuff, you know, you can obviously go to school for this stuff. You can obviously take classes or do online courses. But for the most part, the easiest and most productive way to really learn a lot of the software is just to play around with it. You know, because professional training can take you so far, but if, say you want to make a design like this that's, you know, really text-based, you know, you're not creating a ton of original work for it. It's, you know, like in this case, we have a heart, we have the shape of Rhode Island. All that stuff you can kind of find online in different public domain databases. And it's just a matter of learning how to put everything in place, how to change the colors, just do the little tweaks, and just having that little bit of skill can take you anywhere you want.
Another good online resource is FreePick. It's FREEPIK. And the reason we like to use it here is because it's all royalty-free stuff, but the best part is everything comes in already vectored, so you don't have to go and either hand draw these or find a way to get them traced to turn them into a vector. But this is one thing I just typed in hearts in freepick.com, and this is one of the pages that came up. I downloaded it, opened up in Illustrator, and you can copy it, paste it into your document. So now you're adding graphics that are free, royalty-free graphics to create something unique that, you know, no one else is making.
Yeah, the royalty-free graphics are really helpful in just doing any project, because every once in a while there will be something that you just, maybe you don't have the time or you don't have the necessary skill to make a certain thing that you want. So even if it's not, say, on FreePick, you can always Google royalty-free and then whatever image you want, vector at the end, and there are many, many online databases where you can find most of these files, and you can probably find just about anything you want somewhere on the internet. And once again, like the fonts, they'll usually come with a license that say where you can use it, how you can use it, if it's okay to do it for profit, and you know that'll be a case by case. But for the most part, they'll explain everything to you to make, and you know you won't have a doubt in your mind of
what you can and cannot use. Yeah.
So Jimmy, one of the things that you mentioned is that the best way to learn is to practice. So something that we're going to do today is, after the webinar, for everybody who attended, we're going to send out the Illustrator files so that people can play with this and kind of walk through, and then, you know, as they're rewatching the webinar, if anyone's going through it, they can mimic what you're doing and get the practice with a file like this.
That's a good thing to have, yes, for sure.
And we'll also, for anybody who, you know, who doesn't want to buy Illustrator, because it is a very expensive piece of software. It's very powerful, but you know they don't come cheap. There is also a free version called Inkscape. That's INKSCAPE. And if you Google that, it's almost identical to Illustrator. It's slightly less powerful, but you can, for this kind of design, you can do all of the same things. And we'll also give you a package of SVG files, which is what Inkscape uses, and you can do the exact same thing for free. So you'll still be able to practice it without having to commit to getting Illustrator, because that could be a financial burden for anybody who might not be ready for it.
Now, is an SVG file also a vector file?
Yes, SVG stands for Scalable Vector Graphics. So it's a different version. So there's, you know, AI, which is exclusive to Illustrator. Then you have EPS, which is pretty much universal. And then you have SVG, which is also kind of universal. And a lot of websites can actually read SVGs, and they'll display them on the website. But that's a whole different thing that we're not really going to get into today. But it is something that does exist.
So as you can see, I'm just using the same Same kinds of tools to go through to get everything I need done here. Now, this is just something I came up with real quick yesterday. A lot of people find stuff that they like to go to all the time as far as effects and stuff like that. You definitely, everybody's going to come across one that they like and can incorporate into their own graphics. This Rhode Island the state I used here is basically something that I found just Googling Rhode Island outline. So you can pretty much put any state name and put outline, and I was able to get a pretty good high-res PNG. The thing you want to do when you're searching on Google or any site like that is you can go in to a button called Search Tools, and you can sort stuff by the size, and your best bet is to find the largest dimensions possible. So you got to get your cleanest vector graphics from the largest dimensions possible. When you bring in something that's like 200 pixels by 300 pixels, and you want to get a lot of detail out of it, it can't happen.
Yeah, in this kind of printing, it's always better to go bigger and scale down than it is to go small and then scale up. Because whenever you scale up and it's not a vector graphic, you'll get pixelated, you'll get blurriness, and you'll get all kinds of undesirable results.
So this is a PNG that I found. Now, one thing you can do with Illustrator, which makes it one of the reasons why it's expensive, is it has this palette called Image Trace, which I found in the window. You hit just Image Trace. This window is going to pop up. And the best thing to do is go black and white logo. It takes it from a flattened PNG or Photoshop file to pretty much a vector graphic. Right now it's just a flattened vector graphic. If you would just hit expand up here, now you got your graphic. Grouping and ungrouping is the thing that you got to be doing all the time. So you would ungroup everything, grab the white, just literally hit backspace or delete, and there goes all the white.
So now you're left with your perfect state outline or any kind of graphic that you're doing this with.
One quick way of grabbing a whole color, which is paramount in screen printing, because every color, as everybody knows, every color you add, you're adding more price or cost to the end product. So one thing you want to do is keep all your colors together. So if I was to hit same fill color after I've selected this black, it selects all the black in this piece. I don't think I need to take Block Island in here with me, so I can just hold Shift and click on it, gets rid of it. Command or Control G is going to group it. Command C is going to copy it. Command V is going to paste it. As we all know, trying to do black on black never works. So you want to make this probably the color of your heart. There is another tool in here called the eyedropper. And when you can see that my Rhode Island is selected, but if I click on the color of the heart, it's got to literally make it the same color as the heart.
And the useful way, the best reason for using the eyedropper tool in this circumstance is that you know that your colors will be matching exactly. So when it goes to print, there will be no extra color charges because they are the exact same color. Whereas, say you were to go in like this and kind of just pick a color that looks close, to your eye it might look exactly the same, but to a computer the actual color value will be completely different. So then when it comes to print time, that's going to be a different red than your heart, which means a different color, which means a different screen, which means your base price is going to be higher. So you always want to make sure that your colors are consistent, so that in this case all the whites are the same and all the reds are the same.
One way to make sure you're doing that is to open your swatches palette. And it defaults with all these colors in there, which you don't want. Just like anything else, you can click one and hold Shift. It's going to select them all. Trash can those, so now you have no swatches. If you literally highlight everything you want.
So you just click on a corner and drag, and it'll highlight everything that you're dragging over.
And then you get this Add Selected Colors. So it's literally adding the colors that you selected to your swatches palette. Now you can see you have two of the reds that are wrong. So instead of using the eyedropper tool now, you can literally click on the one. You see that this is the red that the heart is. If you want to make it the same color as the Rhode Island, literally click it. They're now the same color.
So now if you delete those and do the process again, this is how you can double check. And it's always best to double check because any discrepancies can change your base cost, and nobody wants that.
There you go.
So here we have a 2-color design. All the fonts are outlined. Everything's kind of in order. So this design is pretty much ready to go.
Everybody likes to fine-tune their design, so I mean, you can go and select the same colors and literally make it any color under the sun. You're going to go orange. Now you got orange. You don't like that, you can go back. Make it green. Anything you want to do.
Yeah, the best thing about vector graphics is that, especially once you do get used to working with it, it is the easiest form of any kind of artwork to edit. Because pixels, there's only so much you can do with them, but with vector graphics, the limits are nearly endless.
I know in-house we have a certain way of finalizing our graphics, which we would like to have be the standard for everybody uploading to our website, but you can't get a hold of everybody at once. But since you guys are nice enough to log into the webinar, we can show you what we do to finalize our files. But we would save this as a regular AI file, so it's fully editable. I have a nice little folder already here. This is the AI, W Illustrator. Great, perfect. Save. I already have one in there. I'll replace it. That's fine. CC is fine. Now we want to upload EPS files exclusively. Anytime you can upload a vectored EPS, that's what you want to upload. A lot of people try and drop raster graphics in Photoshop, save it as a Photoshop EPS, and think it's the same thing. It's very different.
Yes, Photoshop EPS files are very large, cumbersome. They don't hold as much data as a vector EPS does, and most of the time they won't work in our designer just because if the designer is looking for vector graphics, but it's only finding raster, and then 9 times out of 10 it won't work. So make sure if you are uploading EPS files, it came out of Illustrator or another vector software.
What I would do is highlight everything, and holding Shift, I just deselected the stuff I want to keep. Delete everything. Now, this is black in the background, so we can see what it would look like on a black shirt, but you do not want to have any boxes, even white boxes, behind your artwork. So I locked this ahead of time. All you would need to do is go Object, Unlock All, and it's going to highlight the ones that you just unlocked. The only thing I unlocked is that background. Backspace again, it's gone.
So now it looks like you have a white box in the background, but that is actually a transparency. And if you hit Command-Shift-D, it'll turn it into almost like the Photoshop background with the little checkers, and that can kind of be your double check to make sure that you actually are on a transparency and you don't accidentally have a white box in the background. So that's a good little tip to have.
Definitely.
The more you can double check your artwork and the more kind of checks you can have to make sure that everything you're doing is the way you want it to be done, the better and the more accurate your artwork will be.
Now, if I was to save this as is right here, you see all the extra space I have on the right? If you were to upload this as is, as an EPS, it's not going to let you expand it all the way to have this edge and this edge on the far right and far left. It's going to read this as there's artwork here, and it's not going to let you expand it all the way you want. So you have to make sure your actual page is the size of your graphic. You do that with this tool right here. This just resets your working area.
Yeah, this is the artboard tool, which allows you to resize your artboard any way you want.
Once it's resized, just click on any other tool, and it sets it back to normal. And now you want to go File, Save As, and save it as an Illustrator EPS. You can keep it the same file name because it's going to change the .ai to a .eps, so it's not going to overwrite your Illustrator file. So you'll have one file that has all your fonts. If you want to go back in and retype something, if you keep them in there and you don't delete them, you'll be fine. This EPS file is basically just used for the final upload file. The other thing you want to make sure you're doing is Illustrator CS5.
Yeah, if you're working in anything higher than CS5, so CS6, CC, Creative Cloud, or anything that comes out in the future, make sure you down save it to CS5. If you're working CS5 or below, you don't have to worry about this step. But our system can only read Illustrator CS5 or below files. So that's just a little tip. It's very important, and just make sure you do it if you're using anything newer.
I wouldn't worry about any of these exclamation points. Everything's fine. Okay. We're going to need to see this again. Now, if I close, I were to go to If I go to our Teespring page, I already have the designer pulled up. You really could select any dark color shirt. I'm sure you all know how to upload artwork. If you don't, this is a little quick tutorial. Add upload art, upload your own art, click here to upload. Got a lot of video going on with the system, so it might take it's a little slower than usual, but we should be able to get there. It's the webinar file. This is where I saved it. This is my EPS file that I just created. Hit open.
And now it's analyzing. It may take a minute. I'm sure everybody's seen that quite a few times.
And then there you go. You have a transparent background. This one. Blow it up as big as you want, small as you want, whatever you need to do. The beauty of this is that our system reads it correctly, and it also guarantees that what you created is what you're going to get as a final product.
That looks awesome.
That is true. That is true. Now, if you are a kind of guy where you have something like this, but you want it as, let's say you want to use this as like a template, like I may live in and have nothing there, or my heart is in and have nothing here. You could get rid of your state, leave the heart there. You can literally go back in here. Get rid of California. Get rid of Rhode Island.
Now you have a template where you can add in, basically follow the same steps as before, but now you can add it in however you want.
Show you how to do this real quick. Reset. Save it as again. I'm going to put TEMP, so it's my template. Still an EPS. EPS5. Now if we trash this bad boy, upload our own art, click here to upload, temp right there. All the same steps. Now this is where you can go in and literally type, let's go right back to the California. Make it white.
Make sure when you do that, you use the button that says in use, so that way you know that you're picking the same white. So let's go with Lobster. That's a pretty popular font. So we still get the cursive feel, but it's a little bit different, and it's one of the fonts that comes in our system.
So speaking of our system, we had a question come in from Jeff. Jeff was asking, if we create a design using the Teespring Designer, how do we obtain a vector of the completed design for future design tweaks? That's a great question. So when you launch a campaign now, you can go in your dashboard, and under all of your ended campaigns is something called Create Similar Campaign. And if you click on that, if the elements were brought in from our designer tool, then all of those elements will remain as is. So you'll be able to edit the text files as needed, you'll be able to edit the graphics as needed, and every single element that you put on that shirt is going to be just as editable as it was when you first created it. So creating scalable designs from our designer is that simple with this new launch similar campaign. Otherwise, the alternative is to do exactly what Jonny is doing right now, which is save elements of the file, save the skeleton, if you will, and then put in the other elements as needed. And with this, you can also create the state. So let's say you have a totally different vector zip file that has the vectors of every single state. You can have the shell that Jonny just uploaded that has the I may live in, but my heart is in with the heart. That's locked up. You come in our designer, you plug and play with the states that you want to put in, and then on your own, you can upload the states outlined separately. So you're uploading 2 files and then creating 2 lines of text in the designer. That allows you to customize virtually any what we call platform designs.
Yeah, and these platform designs are great because it gives you the basic shell of what you're going for, but then you can go in and customize it however you want to, so then you can target whatever audience you want without a ton of time and effort going into it.
We had another question just pop in. You mentioned black shirts are selling best. How can we find a report that shows what colors were ordered on a given campaign? That's a great question. If at any point you're curious about any stats on your campaigns, you can check out analytics.teespring.com. And what happens, once you're logged into your Teespring campaign, you're brought to our analytics page, and you get all sorts of data from the number of orders placed today, the number of t-shirts ordered overall, and then for that day, you get a couple of graphs of your traffic as well as your conversions. And then right at the bottom, it tells you how many products of each individual product on your campaign were ordered. So looking at an example right now of an old campaign, it looks like this one had 10 black long sleeve shirts sold, 12 navy ring spun V-necks, and 13 red V-necks. So this has it broken down by color in your analytics for each and every campaign.
Perfect.
All right, now that we've taken you through a lot of the design steps and just working with vector graphics, I know a lot of people don't really know too much about vector graphics or what the difference between vector and raster is, or what vector means and what raster means. So now we're going to take a few steps to just show you what the difference is and why it makes a difference with your designs.
This is our very familiar Teespring logo. From this distance, you can see you're losing a little quality on the right-hand side. This is a full vector graphic on the left. Now, if you see the bottom, it's really pronounced what the problem is. Now, when printing T-shirts, what you see is what you get. So if you were to put something like this and send it to any T-shirt printer, not just the Teespring, send it anywhere, that jagged edge is going to translate itself onto your shirt. Obviously, we don't want that. So working with vector graphics is going to prevent this from ever happening. You'll never have a problem with this if all the graphics you create are vector graphics.
Yeah, and one way to tell if it's a vector or a raster graphic is if you take your direct select tool in Illustrator, which is the white arrow, and then say you just, these layers are locked. So first unlock your layers. That'll be the most helpful option.
Layers.
Yep, so just unlock your layers. And now if you scroll over, say, the t-shirt graphic with your direct select tool, you can see all the paths around it. You can move it around. But when you select your raster graphic, it's a box. There's no editing it. There's not, at least as far as Illustrator is concerned, there's not too much you can do with it. It just is what it is. Where vectors, it's still malleable. You can change all the points. You can move everything around however you want. And it's those paths that will make the actual screen that goes into your print. So now we're going to hop over to Photoshop for a minute. and show you where raster graphics really come into play and how it can take a really cool design that you might have and make it so it doesn't translate well onto a t-shirt. So right here, we have our Teespring logo with a bunch of effects added. We have a bevel, we have an outer glow, we have a drop shadow, and these things are very, very common in web graphics and just a lot of, I mean, you'll see them on banners, you'll see them all over the place. And if we were doing, digital prints, which is basically like your printer at home, it would come out fine. All these points would come out. And to the average person, this might look like it's only about 3-4 colors. We can see the blue, the white, there's the black shadows. It's pretty straightforward. However, to a computer, that is actually thousands and thousands of colors. So when we take it over to Illustrator, we have pre-rendered here. This is the live trace version of it. So this has been reduced to actually 4 colors, and as you can see, there's a little gray, there's a little blue, there's a little dark gray, and it's really muddied the design. And this happens so often, and we don't like to see this, because it can take some really cool graphics, but when it gets translated to the screen printing process, so many of the details are lost just because the pixels can't really be printed that well when you're screen printing.
So yes, this is something you don't want to see. Obviously, no one would want to put this on their t-shirt.
Yeah, so when you work with it, you want to work with, even if you're working with raster graphics, there are still plenty of ways, but if you remove all the effects, say you have the effects on it, and this is the more the thing you want to work with, just the clean, crisp colors, no shades to any colors. This is just blue. There's no gradients to it, which is a fade from one color to another, which, once again, looks really cool when you're on the computer, but when it gets translated to the screens, it can lose all of that detail.
We've had some awesome questions come in so far. We've had tons and tons of them, and we're going to try to answer as many as possible. If you have some, please continue to shoot them over, and we're going to, like I said, try to get through as many as possible. Otherwise, there are some great resources out there. We actually recently had a question, where can we go to get a couple of answers to some FAQs, by Jim. Jim, there's a great resource that we put together that I encourage everybody to check out. It's answers.teespring.com. Again, that's answers.teespring.com. And what that's going to do is give you a platform or a module where you can actually search for keywords in any of your questions. We try to answer as many of those as possible. If you have any other questions and you ever want to reach out, we've set up a channel specifically for people who sell through Teespring, and that channel is sellersuccess@teespring.com. So if you ever have any seller-specific questions about launching campaigns, you want to make some edits to a campaign that you have set up, feel free to reach out to that channel. Again, that's a special department that's been set up to specialize in the requests that sellers and entrepreneurs have. So feel free to reach out to them at any time. There was another question that we had. Knowing all this new info, I'd like to redesign to minimize the colors. Is there an option to edit the designs before there are purchases, or do I have to delete it and start over? You can launch a new campaign. However, if there aren't any sales and you choose to redesign a file, what you can do is reach out to sellersuccess@teespring.com, send them the file that you'd like uploaded, and again, as long as there aren't any sales on the campaign page yet, we'd be happy to swap that out for the new file you have.
All right, thanks, Vince. Now, one thing that we're going to do, because this is a question that we get almost every single day, which is how do you remove a background? So if you were to upload this file as it stands right now, it would go on the shirt, and you'd have our logo, but you'd also have the blue box around it. And like I said, this comes up every single day. How do you remove the box? How do you get rid of the box? Whether there's a white box, a black box, a blue box, any color, this is how you do it.
A lot of times when you open a file like this, you'll see in here, it'll say background, and it'll look like it's locked. You just double click on that, and you hit OK. It's going to create an actual editable layer. The easiest way to do it it always isn't the best way, but the easiest way is taking this tool called the Magic Wand tool. It selects everything of the same color. So you want to get rid of the blue, click on the blue. You'll see these little running ants, they call them, as a selection. It's as easy as hitting delete at that point. You deselect it, now you got just white. The key right here is when you see these checkers, you realize you have a transparent background. Now, if you were to take this and save it as a JPEG is going to flatten that file, and now it's going to give you a white background. You obviously want to hold that transparency. The best way to do that is go File, Save for Web. It's going to bring up this dialog box, gives you a little preview. It'll give you all these different file types. You want PNG. So PNG is going to hold that background, and our system is going to read the transparent background when it's saved as a PNG. So if I hit save, put it where I want.
So in this case, when you upload, like I said, this is this case. So when you upload this graphic onto the website, there'll be no background. It'll be clear, and our website will only pick up the white. That being said, this is also a very clear image. This is another case of bigger is better. If you're working with a very small, say 200, 300 pixel file, you might lose a ton of detail on it when you use that magic wand, but there really isn't too much of a way around that because the file is so small. So we can't stress this enough. Always use the biggest file you can find.
Is there an upper limit to the size of a file that can be uploaded in our designer?
I believe it's
10.
10?
Yeah.
10 inches?
No. Are you talking file size, or are you talking the actual dimensions?
The file size.
The file size, the max I'd say is 10 megabytes. And
okay.
You can, believe me, we've done it. You can stuff a lot of detail in a file that's under 10 megabytes.
Yeah, the only time you'll ever, the standard limit is about 5 megabytes because that's just a really good file. The only time that you'd even really get into the realm of 10 megabytes or anything between there is when you have a grunge texture, distressed font, any of that kind of stuff. That's when a lot of the details come in. But as far as, say, a PNG file, you will almost never run into it being 10 megs unless you've made it, almost like 1 million pixels in each direction, which would be a gigantic file that you would never even want to go near. But as far as when you're uploading a PNG file, you probably want to upload around 3,000 pixels. That's a pretty solid file. 3,000 pixels actually translates to about 10 inches of actual space. So that's a very good sized piece of artwork.
So we had a quick question come in. Thanks so much for this awesome webinar. You're very, very welcome. If we are using a graphic designer, should we only be working with those who can produce vector EPS as opposed to raster files? Thanks again. The follow-up to that would be, if you get a raster file, what would the best steps be to making it conducive to upload in our designer?
That is a great question.
Couple good questions, definitely.
Yeah. Whenever possible, if you can get vector graphics, that will almost guarantee that what you are seeing is what you'll get. Because when you upload any kind of raster graphics, it does have to get translated to vector before it can go to be printed, which most of the time is totally fine. You won't notice anything. But say if you did get a smaller file, then you might notice some of the lossiness. That's when you get into a situation like you have here, where say it was a raster graphic with effects on it and it wasn't that big, you're going to get these like blobby corners that you don't want to have. So basically, the long and the short of it, vector graphics whenever possible. If not possible, go raster graphics with a high resolution that's you can tell your designer, I need this in 300 dpi. They'll know what it means. You tell them, I want flat colors, no effects whatsoever, transparent background, and then you'll be able to get it onto the website without any problems. Now, say if they do give you a file with any of these, the easiest thing you can do is send it into Illustrator, where you can try that live trace feature. If it is a large enough file dimension-wise, then you shouldn't have too much of a loss of your file. But say if you do that and it translates poorly and you get an undesired effect, you might at that point have to go back to your designer and say, I need this larger, I need this cleaner. For the most part, a designer would be happy to do that for you. Not always. It's a very case-by-case basis. So you definitely want to try to get vector whenever possible or a clean raster. That's the biggest piece of advice that we have about that.
So, Jimmy, you just mentioned a few things, and if you could rattle them off again, that would be fantastic. You said, first of all, you want to have a minimum of 300 DPI, and then you said you want a transparent background. What were the other things that you said would be great to ask the designer for if they're sending you a raster file?
Yeah, flat colors. That's a big one.
No effects, no gradients, no outer glows, no drop shadows, just flat, solid, one-color graphics. So you can have 10 colors in a design, but each element of the design needs to be a solid color.
So if you have any section of a design that fades from one color to another, that actually will make up thousands of colors in between. So you don't want that. So if you say flat colors or just solid colors, the designer should know what you're talking about, and they should give you a result that's just like what you see on the screen right now, just solid colors.
Good thing to know as well is if you're saying stuff like this to a designer and you can tell they really don't know what you're talking about, it's in your best interest to find somebody that knows what you're talking about.
Yes.
They're out there. They're willing to work. Believe me, I used to be one. You just gotta. Attitude goes a long way. So it's not worth your time fighting with somebody to get the correct graphics when you can find somebody that can do it correctly without a headache. Especially for you guys, we know your time is valuable, and that would be your best bet is to find somebody that can just knock it out fairly quickly, give you the files, you upload them, and you don't have to give them back because they're ready to go.
And that's a great point that Johnny brought up. I've actually spoken with a lot of our designers for a while, and finding a designer that's compatible is going to be extremely important for your workflow going forward. Finding a designer that you could give the criticism to that you need so that at the end of the day you end up with the file that you deserve, and it's the file that you want. Myself, I am terrible at bringing my ideas to life, but the number of times that I've gone to Johnny, Jimmy, and the rest of our design team and said, hey, I need this, this, and this, and they've brought back something incredible. It's just having a designer that can do that is invaluable. And then once in a while you get something that's like, oh, that's great, let's take it another direction. Finding a designer who's receptive to your feedback can make your entire process that much more efficient and that much more enjoyable. Not to mention, you'll probably sell more shirts with an awesome design.
Absolutely.
Very true.
And so, as far as using other designers, we do have a full design team, and I think we have one of the most fantastic design teams we could have ever assembled. And I truly mean that, and that's based on seeing, at this point, thousands and thousands of designs that they've produced. But it definitely is important in your workflow to have a designer, obviously, first of all, you can use our design services. However, having a designer that you can sit next to and work next to, I understand how that works in a lot of people's workflows, and having one that you can work closely with is very important.
Yeah, like Johnny was saying, designers are everywhere. You can find them online. You can just search like freelance designers on Google. You'll get thousands of results. You can find one in your area by refining your search, say freelance designer in Reno, Nevada, if that's where you are. And I'm sure you can find hundreds, if not thousands, of people in your area that will be more than willing to help you out. And if you start working with them, just make sure you have a conversation with them. Because if you just have a quick conversation and you can see that you guys aren't on the same page, let them know. Because they'll be more than receptive to that. And then you can find somebody else, and you will find the person who will be able to help you get the result that you want.
Yeah, you're better off taking your time to find the right guy instead of getting 5 designs back and none of them are right, and you just wasted your time with somebody that is never going to get you something that would work to begin with. I mean, I know it's a trial and error thing. You do need to work with people, but if you get one back and it's not what you wanted and they don't want to change it, it's just if it turns into a headache, you're better off finding somebody else.
The other thing is that, this presentation I think has been incredibly informative and incredibly helpful. Hopefully you've learned a few things so that you guys can create some cool designs on your own. As it was mentioned, there are a bunch of tutorials out there where you can learn how to use Illustrator and Photoshop from home. I hope that this is giving you a springboard as far as where to get started in the design processes. So there's a lot there's a lot of information out there on graphic design, and there are a lot of resources out there. Whether you're playing around in Photoshop, Illustrator, or a design creation tool yourself, or just playing around in our designer, everybody who's involved in this webinar right now could create a winning design. We've seen it happen countless of times where somebody's created a design in our designer and it's sold thousands of shirts. And it's easy, it's scalable. It's one that they can roll out to the state of California, Rhode Island, New York, and the entire country. So there are a lot of resources out there, and we hope that at the end of this, what you can do is, number one, identify a good design if you're working with an outside designer. Number two, tweak a design. Let's say they send you the AI file and you want to change it a little bit. You have the skills to do so now. Number three, give you the confidence to learn this on your own. And you can see that, yeah, it is difficult to do, but given enough time, you too can be creating designs just as good as these guys. So I think at the end of this webinar that we'll have achieved that. I hope that you guys feel the same way and know that it is that easy, and it's also valuable, and it'll help you in designing your shirts moving forward.
Perfect. The stuff we had set up, we pretty much ran through. If there's specific questions that you guys have, Vince is keeping it up. The chat's coming on. If you got some more of those questions, I mean, we got no problem answering them. You got us here now. You might as well do it.
Absolutely. One question that we had, what do you guys think about GIMP software? This is from Jennifer. Admittedly, I don't know what GIMP software is. Are you guys a little more familiar with that?
Yes, GIMP is essentially the free version of Photoshop. Like Inkscape to Illustrator, GIMP is less powerful, but it's free. So to remove, say you wanted to remove a background, I believe they also have a magic wand tool or something equivalent, so you could do the same thing.
You can save file types out of that.
Yeah, you can save the PNG file with the transparent background. You can do most of the same things, and anything that would be necessary for launching a shirt, you could do with GIMP.
Basically, anything for a novice, someone who, for us, it would kind of be a waste of time because we can do stuff faster and easier in the paid programs that we have. But for someone who is doing stuff like you guys, just getting rid of backgrounds, erasing something so you can save the PNG and drop it in our designer, and then add type in our designer, that's the kind of stuff that GIMP would cover. Now, if you want to start getting crazy and doing some crazy stuff, you'd obviously have to go up to the next level. But it's a tool, and it can be used.
Yeah, that's the biggest thing. All of these programs, yeah, they do a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, they are just a tool. And the biggest thing you can do is just learn how to use them. Because if you can use any of these software, whether they're paid, whether they're free, if you can use them effectively, that's going to make all the difference in the world. It doesn't matter if you have the $1,000 software that is made by one of the best companies in the world, or if you have a piece of software that was made from some guy down the street. It's all tools, and it all matters how you use it. Because if you use it, just like with any tool, if you use a hammer and you can't hit the nail, you're not going to get the job done. But if you get used to using a hammer, you can hit the nail every time, that's when it becomes effective.
This is great. Perfect. We had another question just pop in. Will Teespring flag artwork that is not good enough quality? I assume that I don't hear back my image should print fine, right? So due to the volume of campaigns that are launched, there isn't a system right now that's going to pick up whether or not the quality of the image is good, bad, or ugly. But what you can do is when you upload it into Photoshop or Illustrator, as Jimmy and Johnny spoke about, you can look at the images and see whether or not those are going to be good files and whether or not you're ending up with a pixelated image. And then once you upload it into our designer, you'll be able to get a little bit of a feel for that.
Yeah, so as you can see right here, go to the other Photoshop file that we have open.
Okay.
So, yeah, turn all the effects back on. Let's just use this one as an example because this isn't the largest image in the world. It's still decently sized, but it is still fairly small. And if you zoom in on it, this is where it gets really good. When you zoom in on it and you see the pixels and you see that there's a fade in colors, that's when you can kind of tell that it might not translate well. Whereas if you go back to our other file, I purposely made this a very large file. Yeah, so just toss in a background so we can see that. So now, as you can kind of see, as you zoom in a little bit, there's still some pixelation, but it's on a much, much smaller scale. So you have to zoom in so far to be able to see any degradation. And if you're zoomed out to about the size that you'd actually see it on a shirt, so if you zoom in just a little bit, so go a little bit farther, say this is about how big it's going to be on the shirt. You don't see any pixelation. You don't see any distortion whatsoever. Now, say you had a small file. So if you go back to our Illustrator file for a minute, where we showed the vector versus raster.
Yeah.
So now you take this file and zoom in on this one especially. See, it looks clear from a distance, but say you wanted it this big on a t-shirt, that's the level of detail that you'd see on a t-shirt. So basically, the easiest way to do it is actually get it up to about the size that you would put it on a t-shirt and look at it on your screen at the size that you want it. That's, it's not like a foolproof method, but it is kind of a general, quick, and easy way to just look at your file and to see what kind of quality the file actually is. Now, say you've got an image off of a Google search. It's only about 300 pixels wide. When you zoom in on it, you're going to quickly see that the pixels become very large, very fast. There's going to be blurriness, and you're going to lose all the detail that you were just looking at on a smaller scale.
Awesome. So a quick question that we've had. There are a couple more coming in, more and more. Wow, we're getting a lot of questions now. So what we're going to do is we're going to open it up and we're going to hop in our forums. So we have forums at talk.teespring.com. Again, that's talk.teespring.com. And we'll be in there answering some more questions about this. There's some questions about what we consider a large file size, asking about CMYK colors, things of that nature. So we also had a question about will we send a replay to everybody? Absolutely. That is one thing we will be doing. The webinar has been recorded, and it will be sent out to all attendees. So we're going to wrap this up, but we do want to get to as many questions as we can. So we'll try to answer some of those again in our forums at talk.teespring.com. Jonny and Jimmy, did you have any closing remarks that you wanted to throw out quick?
I mean, it's an amazing company. It's an amazing platform. It's super powerful. And the better you guys are at understanding graphics, the better it's going to make us look as a company because the more quality products you're going to generate. And it's going to make, especially people who are trying to build a brand, it's going to make your customers come back because they know they're getting a quality product. The fact that we give you the option to pick high-quality shirts to put this stuff on, there's no reason you should put low-quality graphics on high-quality shirts. So the more you understand the stuff we're talking about, the better product you're going to get to your customers.
Yeah, and Teespring is one of the greatest companies you could ever work for. But all of our success, everything that makes this company great, is because of every single person who uses our platform. So all of you watching this right now, for one thing, thank you for doing this.
Yes.
And keep at it. If you haven't tipped a campaign yet, you will. If you maybe have tipped campaigns, but say you personally aren't a fan of the designs, keep working at it. Keep practicing everything you do, and just be everything that you can, because everything that you do helps us get better, and then in turn we can help you grow as sellers, and it's a mutually beneficial relationship between all of us.
Yeah, absolutely. So I want to wrap this up really quickly. Again, there are a few questions that have been left unanswered. Check them out. Check out talk.teespring.com. There's a thread that has been started. It's called Design Webinar Tomorrow. feel free to head over there, post any unanswered questions in that. We have a couple of really, really exciting announcements coming out today as well that I can't help but smile about. I think you guys are going to be really, really excited about this. I hope that you guys have some takeaways from this webinar that you can apply to the design processes. I look forward to these every couple of weeks, every time that these webinars come up, because I know how much I learn from it and hopefully how much value we add to you guys. We wouldn't be here without you. Again, the partnerships that we've created are invaluable. It's our favorite part about working at Teespring. It's working with the creators and the entrepreneurs who have been empowered by our platform. And we love positioning ourselves here as your support, your logistics, and your fulfillment house that you choose. So thank you so much for doing so. Again, we're really, really excited to see some of these new files that come through. If you ever have any questions, a couple resources for you. First of all, talk.teespring.com is our forums, and we'll be monitoring that regularly to answer any questions that pop up. If you ever have any campaign-related or sales-related questions, reach out to sellersuccess@teespring.com via email, and one of our agents will be able to reply to you. Always feel free to reach out to me directly. My email is vince@teespring.com. Connect with me on Facebook. Just search Vince Tumbleson. And there are going to be a couple of announcements coming out again a little bit later today and over the next couple of weeks that I think you guys are going to be really, really excited about. So thank you guys so much for attending. Depending on where you are in the world, I hope you enjoyed it this morning or this afternoon, this evening, or tonight. We really appreciate your time. And again, thank you so, so much for attending, and we look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.